The morning sun painted the Montana sky in shades of amber and gold. Clay Travis stood on his porch, coffee in hand, watching his daughter Sarah ride across the meadow. Her laughter carried on the wind like music. At 52, Clay had earned his peace. 20 years of honest ranching had weathered his hands and grayed his temples, but it had also given him something precious, a life worth living. The violence of his youth, those dark years as a hired gun, seemed like another man's memories now. Sarah was everything good he'd ever done. 18 years old, with her mother's bright eyes and fierce spirit. She'd never known the man he used to be, and he'd worked hard to keep it that way. "Papa," she called, waving from the ridge, "I'm riding to town for supplies." Clay waved back, pride swelling in his chest. He turned back to his coffee, unaware that in 5 hours, his entire world would burn to ash. The ranch hands were mending fences when the stranger rode in. Nobody paid him much mind at first. Drifters came through Montana territory all the time. But there was something about this one, something in the way he sat his horse, that made Clay's old instincts prickle. The man wore a black duster despite the heat. His face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and he didn't dismount. He just sat there, watching the ranch with eyes that glittered like chips of ice. By sunset, when Sarah still hadn't returned, Clay knew something was terribly wrong. "Howdy, partners! This is Hank Wilson, and welcome back to another journey into the heart of the Wild West. Today, I've got something special for you folks. We're diving into a tale of blood, vengeance, and a father's desperate love. This is Blood on the Prairie, a story that'll remind you that some debts can only be paid in lead and gunpowder. Now, before we ride into this storm, do me a favor. Hit that like button if you're ready for some Old West justice, and drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from. I always love seeing how far across this big world our stories travel. From the Americas to Europe, Asia to Africa, it amazes me every time. All right then, let's saddle up. Our story begins on what should have been just another peaceful morning on the Montana prairie. Clay rode hard toward town, his heart hammering against his ribs. The road stretched empty before him, dust devils dancing in the dying light. Sarah should have been home hours ago. He found her horse first. The mare stood riderless by the creek, reins trailing in the water, saddlebags still packed with supplies. No signs of struggle, no blood. Just an empty saddle and the growing darkness. Clay's hands shook as he examined the ground. Boot prints, 2 sets of them, leading away from the road. One small, Sarah's size, the other larger, heavy, the stride of a man dragging someone who didn't want to go. Then he saw it, caught on a thorny bush, a scrap of blue fabric from Sarah's dress, and beneath it, scratched in the dirt with desperate fingers, a single word: help. Something cold and terrible awakened inside Clay Travis, something he'd buried 20 years ago. The peaceful rancher began to die, replaced by the man he'd sworn never to be again. He rode back to the ranch in a fury, barely seeing the path before him. His foreman, old Tom Brennan, met him at the barn. One look at Clay's face told him everything he needed to know. "Someone took her," Clay said, his voice flat and dead. "I'm going after them." Tom nodded slowly. "I'll gather the men." "No." Clay's word cut like a knife. "This is my fight. Keep the ranch running. If I'm not back in 2 weeks..." He didn't finish. They both knew what that meant. In the dusty cellar beneath his house, Clay opened a trunk he hadn't touched in 2 decades. Inside lay the tools of his former trade. Twin Colt .45s, perfectly maintained despite the years. A Winchester rifle, a gun belt worn smooth by use, and a reputation that still made old-timers whisper. Clay Travis had once been known by another name, the Montana Ghost. They'd called him that because he could track a man across solid rock and put a bullet through a silver dollar at 50 paces. He'd killed 17 men in fair fights before he hung up his guns. Now he strapped on the gun belt, feeling its familiar weight settle on his hips. His hands moved through the old rituals automatically, checking the action, loading the cylinders, adjusting the holsters for a fast draw. He caught his reflection in a dusty mirror. The man looking back wasn't the peaceful rancher anymore. This man had hard eyes and a harder heart. This man would do whatever it took to bring his daughter home. At dawn, he rode out alone. The trail led northeast toward the Badlands. Whoever took Sarah had a 12-hour head start, but Clay had something they didn't. Skills honed by years of hunting men through country just like this. By midday, he'd found their camp. 2 men, maybe 3. They'd stopped to rest, confident they weren't being followed. Clay studied the tracks with practiced eyes, reading the story they told. Sarah was still alive. He could tell by the way they'd set up camp, the way they'd rationed their supplies. Dead weight they would have left behind. But a living hostage, that had value. The question was, why? Why take a rancher's daughter from a quiet Montana road? The answer, Clay knew, lay somewhere in his violent past. On the 3rd day, Clay caught up to them. Not close enough to strike, but close enough to confirm what his gut had been telling him. This wasn't random. These men knew exactly who they'd taken, and more importantly, whose daughter she was. Through his spyglass, he counted 4 men now. 3 he didn't recognize, but the 4th, the one in the black duster, made his blood run cold. Even at this distance, even after 20 years, Clay knew that face. Silas Blackwood. The name brought back memories Clay had tried to bury. Deadwood, 1865. The Copper Mine Massacre. Clay had been hired to protect the mine owner's family. Blackwood had been hired to kill them. Clay had won that fight, but barely. He'd put 3 bullets in Blackwood and watched him fall into a ravine. Everyone assumed the man had died. Apparently, everyone was wrong. Now it made sense. This wasn't about Sarah at all. This was about revenge, 20 years in the making. Blackwood had survived, nursed his hatred, waited for the perfect moment to strike. And he'd found it in the thing Clay loved most. That night, Clay made his first move. He crept into their camp while they slept, silent as smoke. He wasn't there to kill them, not yet. He needed to know where they were taking Sarah, what Blackwood's endgame was. He slit their horses' lead ropes and scattered their ammunition. Small delays, but they'd buy him time. Then he left something behind. A playing card, the ace of spades, propped against Blackwood's saddle. A message written on its face in ash. I'm coming. Let Blackwood know the Montana ghost was back. Let him feel the fear he'd made others feel. Blackwood found the card at dawn. His roar of fury echoed across the prairie. Clay, watching from a distant ridge, allowed himself a grim smile. Good. Let the bastard know what it felt like to be hunted. The dynamic had changed. Blackwood sent 2 of his men back to find Clay, while he pushed forward with Sarah and the 3rd man. It was exactly what Clay had wanted. Divide and conquer. The first man died at noon, never even seeing Clay's gun clear leather. The second was smarter, tried to ambush Clay at a water crossing, but Clay had been expecting that. The man's body floated downstream, a bullet hole between his eyes. Clay felt nothing as he watched them die. These men had taken his daughter. They'd forfeited their right to mercy when they put their hands on her. But with each kill, he felt himself slipping further from the man he'd become, back into the man he'd been. The violence came too easily, too naturally. It scared him how much he didn't hate it. That night, he found Sarah's hair ribbon tied to a tree branch. A message from Blackwood, a taunt. Clay crushed it in his fist, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Hold on, Sarah, he whispered to the darkness. Papa's coming. The trail led into the Badlands proper now, a maze of canyons and rock formations. Perfect ambush country. Blackwood was leading him somewhere specific, somewhere he'd prepared. Clay knew it was a trap. He rode into it anyway. Because that's what fathers do. They walk into hell itself if that's where their children are. The canyon walls rose like tombstones on either side. Clay's horse picked its way carefully over the rocky ground, every hoofbeat echoing like thunder. Up ahead, he could see smoke rising from what looked like an old mining camp. Clay dismounted and continued on foot, Winchester in hand. His eyes scanned every shadow, every outcropping. Blackwood was here somewhere, waiting. The shot came from above, kicking up dust at Clay's feet. He dove behind a boulder as two more bullets ricocheted off the rock. Blackwood's remaining man positioned on the canyon rim. Clay counted to 3, then rolled out, bringing the Winchester up in one smooth motion. 2 shots. The first hit the sniper's rifle, sending it spinning away. The second hit the man himself. He toppled forward, falling 50 feet to land in a broken heap. Silence fell over the canyon. Clay moved forward, every sense alert. The mining camp ahead consisted of 3 weathered buildings, windows dark and empty. Could be a dozen men hiding in there, could be none. "Travis!" Blackwood's voice boomed from somewhere inside. "I've been waiting 20 years for this." Clay didn't answer. He circled wide, approaching from an unexpected angle. Through a gap in the boards, he caught a glimpse of movement. Sarah, tied to a chair in the main building, alive. Terrified, but alive. Blackwood stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, the other holding a gun. His face was scarred, ruined by the bullets Clay had put in him 2 decades ago. "I want you to feel it, Travis. I want you to know what it's like to lose everything, like I did." Clay stepped into the doorway, both Colts drawn. "Let her go, Blackwood. This is between you and me." Blackwood's laugh was harsh, broken. "Ha ha ha ha! Between us? You took everything from me, my face, my career, my life." "You came to kill an innocent family," Clay said, his voice cold. "I stopped you. That's not taking, that's justice." "Justice?" Blackwood spat. "Where's the justice in this?" He gestured to his scarred face. "Where's the justice in 20 years of pain?" Sarah's eyes met Clay's across the room. He saw fear there, but also trust. She believed he would save her. He couldn't let her down. "You want justice?" Clay said. "Fine. Face me, gun to gun like the old days. You win, you walk away. I win, Sarah goes free." Blackwood considered this, his finger tightening on the trigger of the gun pressed to Sarah's head. Then slowly, he nodded. "Like the old days. But when I kill you, Travis, I'm killing her too. I want you to die knowing you failed." He shoved Sarah aside and faced Clay. Both men holstered their weapons. The room seemed to hold its breath. "On 3, Blackwood said. 1. Clay's hand hovered over his Colt. Time seemed to slow. 2. Blackwood drew on 2, the cheat. But Clay had been expecting it. His guns cleared leather like lightning, thundering in the confined space. Blackwood's bullet went wide, punching through the wall behind Clay. Clay's shots didn't miss. Both bullets found their mark, center mass. Blackwood staggered backward, disbelief etched on his ruined face. "Still, faster," Blackwood gasped, blood spreading across his chest. He collapsed to his knees, then fell forward, dead before he hit the ground. Clay stood frozen for a moment, gun smoke curling from his barrels. Then Sarah's sob broke the spell. He rushed to her, cutting her bonds with trembling hands. "Papa!" She threw her arms around him, and he held her tight, feeling her alive and whole against him. 20 years of peace, gone in a week. But his daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. "I've got you," he whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you." They rode home slowly, Sarah's arms wrapped around his waist. She didn't ask about the bodies they'd left behind. She didn't ask about the guns he wore or the cold efficiency with which he'd used them. Some questions were better left unasked. When the ranch came into view 3 days later, Clay felt something inside him settle. Tom and the hands rushed out to meet them, relief plain on their faces. That night, after Sarah was safely asleep, Clay went to the cellar. He looked at the guns, still strapped to his hips. Part of him wanted to put them back in the trunk, to return to being just a rancher. But he knew better now. The Montana ghost had never really died. He'd just been sleeping. And now that he was awake, Clay understood something fundamental. Peace wasn't the absence of violence. It was the willingness to use violence to protect what you loved. He hung the gun belt on a peg by the door. Not hidden away, but not worn either. Ready if needed. A reminder of who he'd been, who he'd become, and who he might need to be again. Upstairs, Sarah slept peacefully. The ranch stretched out under the stars, quiet and whole. Clay Travis had paid the price for his past, and he'd paid it in blood. But he'd won something too, the future. His daughter's future. And that was worth any cost. And so ends Clay Travis's journey through the blood-soaked plains of Montana. A man who tried to leave his violent past behind, but discovered that some ghosts never rest until they're confronted. This is a story about how far a father will go to protect those he loves. About how violence, even when buried deep, can resurface when everything that matters is at stake. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Old West. If you enjoyed this tale of vengeance and redemption, share it with other lovers of Western stories.